There has been a clear change in tone on both sides, more so May after the elections. Craig Erlam, Oanda. Why did the Bank of England Governor Mark Carney decide it was not the right time for the British Monetary Authority to hike interest rates?
Well, I think there's a number of factors at play here. Of course, there is the fact that inflation is at 2.9%, even only a little bit less in terms of core, which is well above the Bank of England's target of 2%. But this is largely driven by the currency moves, and while some policymakers are paying a lot of attention to this and the fact that it's come in higher than what their previous expectations were, this is what concerns them, and that's why they're potentially favouring a rate hike, or already favoured a rate hike from the central bank. I think Mark Carney's looking beyond just the currency moves and is focused more on what else or what will drive sustainably higher inflation, which is, in his view, and I think I agree, what would warrant a rate hike, and that is higher demand. Well, demand is a little bit softer right now, and it's expected to soften again over the next 12 to 18 months. He's looking at things like the growth figures, he's looking at wages, and none of these data points point to higher inflation in the longer run. So I think he's willing to look through this short-term spike and wait to see if the higher levels of inflation become more ingrained, start to affect consumer inflation expectations, and at that point then I think he'll be prepared to step in. But I think right now the current economic environment is not one that's really conducive with interest rates rising.
May will have her first meet in the EU summit after the general elections and will discuss the treatment of the bloc citizens after Brexit. How will this meet set out the tone for the negotiations?
Well, I think this is going to really lay the foundation for how the rest of the negotiations are going to go. I think so far, both sides have driven quite a hard line. I think there's been a lot of posturing from both sides. I think Theresa May and her team have wanted to stress the reasons why that we need to be open to the possibility of no deal, because they don't want to accept a hard deal. They believe that we are in a good enough position that there should be a deal that should be agreed at the end of these talks, which should benefit both sides. Meanwhile, the EU also have to position themselves in a manner that says to the rest of the other 27 countries, you will be worse off if you leave, and therefore that sentiment has to be reflected in how they go into these negotiations. I think the difference now is we've gone from a year of posturing and a year of chatter, and now we're actually entering the real negotiations, and I think there's been a very clear change of tone from both sides, probably more so May after those elections, but definitely both sides, and it's become more of a friendlier vibe, and we saw how they took Theresa May's first offer with regards to citizens' rights in the last 24 hours or so. They've welcomed her position. They're pleased with what she's offered. They think there's going to need to be some negotiating there, which is to be expected. But there seems to be a lot more pleasantries and a lot less fighting talk. So hopefully the early signs are positive and it will bode well going forward. But I think we have to be prepared for some much tougher negotiations along the way also.
The Reserve Bank of New Zealand left interest rates unchanged. For what reasons did they do this?
Well, I think there's a couple of factors again at play here. I think the global environment is a little bit concerning. Things like commodity prices, I think, are uncertain to a large degree. Growth is still a challenge for the RBNZ. Now, we have seen slightly higher inflation recently, but I don't think they think this is sustainable. And this, again, there's similarities with the UK, where they may be seeing high levels of inflation now, but if they don't see those persisting, then I think in their eyes it'd be wrong to act and to begin raising interest rates, potentially putting the economy under further pressure and creating the possibility of further issues down the road. And instead they're willing to look beyond this and look at the longer term picture. And I think the longer term picture in their view is still below acceptable demand, below acceptable growth, which should ultimately lead to below acceptable inflation. And that's something that's going to require large amounts of monetary stimulus. And I think with the currency already so high, they may not have mentioned this after the meeting, but with the currency so high, I think if they were to raise interest rates now, that would exacerbate the problem even further and put the economy under a lot more strain. They've said they're going to wait till the end of 2019, and it seems very much like that's the path that they're going to stick to.
Well, thank you, Craig Erlam, for speaking with us today from Oanda, and thank you at home for clicking back. Enjoy the weekend.